February 16th, 1981. Brookfield, Connecticut. It is a cold afternoon. The ground is frozen. The trees are bare. In a small dog kennel facility, the music is blaring. A 19-year-old tree surgeon named Arne Cheyenne Johnson is having lunch with his girlfriend, David Glatzel, and his landlord, Arne Bono. They are drinking. They are laughing. It seems like a normal day, but then something shifts. The mood in the room changes. A simple argument starts over the volume of the radio. It should have been a small fight. It should have ended with someone walking away. But witnesses say that Arne stopped looking like Arne. His face went pale. His eyes, usually warm and friendly, turned black. His posture changed. He began to growl, not scream. Growl like a wild animal trapped in a corner. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a 5-inch folding knife. Arne Bono stepped back, confused. He asked Arne what he was doing. Arne didn't answer. He lunged. In a matter of seconds, Arne stabbed his landlord repeatedly in the chest and stomach. The blade went all the way to the hilt. It was savage. It was brutal. It was inhuman. When the police arrived, they found Arne Bono dying on the ground. They found Arne Johnson a few miles away, walking aimlessly near the woods. He was covered in blood. He was staring at the sky. When the officer approached him, Arne didn't run. He just looked at the policeman and said, "I think I hurt someone." This sounds like a tragic case of alcohol and anger. A typical American murder. But this was not typical. Months later, in a superior court in Connecticut, Arne's lawyer stood up in front of a judge, a jury, and reporters from all over the world, and entered a plea that had never been heard in the history of the United States legal system. He didn't claim self-defense. He didn't claim insanity. He claimed that Arne Johnson was innocent because, at the moment of the murder, he was not Arne Johnson. The lawyer looked the judge in the eye and said, "The devil made him do it." This is the true story behind The Conjuring 3. But unlike the movie, there are no special effects here. There is a real dead body. There is a real family destroyed. And there is a question that still haunts the town of Brookfield today. Can a demon force a man to kill? Welcome to the true story of the Arne Cheyenne Johnson case. To understand the murder, we cannot start in 1981. We have to go back 1 year earlier, to the summer of 1980. And we have to look at a terrified little boy named David Glatzel. David was Debbie Glatzel's younger brother. He was only 11 years old. He was a sweet, normal kid who loved baseball and riding his bike. The trouble began when the Glatzel family went to fix up a rental property they had acquired. It was an old house, dusty, dark. While sweeping a bedroom, little David ran out screaming. He was shaking. He was crying. He told his mother that he saw an old man. He described the man in terrifying detail. He said the man had a white beard, wearing a flannel shirt and jeans. But when the man looked down, his skin was burnt black, and he didn't have feet. He had cloven hooves, like a goat. The old man pointed a finger at David and said, "Beware." The family told David it was just a nightmare. They told him he had an active imagination. They continued working on the house, but the visions didn't stop. They followed David home. David started waking up in the middle of the night, screaming that the beast was in the room. He said the beast would change forms. Sometimes it was the old man. Sometimes it was a dog with glowing red eyes. And then the physical attacks began. This is where the story moves from psychological to physical. David would wake up with deep scratches on his back. Bruises would appear on his arms while his parents watched. His personality changed. The sweet boy disappeared. In his place was something angry, something hateful. David began to hiss at his parents. He would kick and bite. He started reciting passages from the Bible, but he would say them backwards. He would speak in a deep, guttural voice that an 11-year-old vocal cord should not be able to produce. He would speak Latin. He would quote John Milton's Paradise Lost. The family was terrified. They were Catholic, but they didn't know how to handle this. They called priests. The priests blessed the house, but the holy water seemed to make David worse. Desperate, they called the only people they thought could help. Ed and Lorraine Warren. Ed and Lorraine were famous. They had investigated the Amityville horror. They were controversial, but they were the experts. When Lorraine Warren walked into the Glatzel home, she claimed she felt a dark, heavy presence immediately. She looked at David and said she saw a black mist swirling around him. Ed and Lorraine interviewed David. They watched him, and they came to a terrifying conclusion. They told the parents, "Your son is not mentally ill. He is possessed, and he is not possessed by one entity. He is possessed by 43. The church authorized an exorcism. It was set for a cold night in the fall of 1980. Several priests were present. Ed and Lorraine were there, and so was Arne Johnson. Arne was there because he loved Debbie. He wanted to protect her little brother. He didn't, and Apos T really believe in demons. He thought David just needed help, but that night changed everything for Arne. During the exorcism, witnesses claim that David levitated off the chair. They claim he threw a priest across the room. He spat at them. He laughed at their prayers. Arne Johnson couldn't, and Apos T take it anymore. He watched this little boy suffering, twisting in pain, screaming for help. Arne was a big guy. He was strong. He felt helpless. In a moment of pure emotion, Arne knelt down beside David. He looked into the boy and Apo's eyes, and he made a challenge. He shouted at the invisible entity. He screamed, "Leave him alone. Leave him alone and take me instead. I am stronger. Come into me." Ed Warren heard this. He grabbed Arne's arm. He told him to stop. He said, "You, Dan, and Apples, know what you are doing. You never challenge a demon." But it was too late. According to the family, David's body suddenly went limp. The screaming stopped. The boy fell into a deep sleep. When he woke up, he remembered nothing. The scratches healed. The visions stopped. David was cured. The family rejoiced. They thought the nightmare was over. But Arne Johnson began to feel sick. A few days after the exorcism, Arne told Debbie that he felt like he was being watched. He said he felt a heaviness in his chest. He started crashing his car. He drove into a tree, claiming that a demon had taken control of the steering wheel. He went to a well on the property and stared into it for hours, saying he could see the beast looking back at him. Arne, who was known as a gentle giant, started getting into fights. He started growling. He told Debbie, "The beast is here. It wants my soul." And that brings us back to February 16th, 1981, the day of the murder. Arne called in sick to work. He went to the kennel where Debbie worked. They went to lunch with Alan Bono. Alan Bono was a 40-year-old man. He was the landlord. He was known to drink too much. On that day, he had been drinking wine. He got aggressive. He grabbed Debbie's young cousin, Mary, and wouldn't, and Apple's let go. Arne stepped in to help. It should have been a shoving match, but witnesses say Arne went into a trance. He stared past Alan at something only he could see. He let out a low growl that rose into a high-pitched scream, and then he attacked. 5 stabs, one after another. When the police interrogated him, Arne claimed he had no memory of the event. He said he remembered eating lunch, and then he remembered sitting by the tree with blood on his hands. The time in between was a black void. The trial of Arne Cheyenne Johnson became a media circus. It was 1981. The satanic panic was just starting in America. Everyone was talking about cults and demons. Arne's lawyer, Martin Manella, realized he had a unique case. He had the Warrens. He had the priests. He had the testimony of the Glatzel family. He decided to go for it. He filed a plea of not guilty by reason of demonic possession. He planned to put the devil on trial. He wanted to bring the priests to the stand to testify that possession is real. He wanted to show the jury the scratches on David's body. But the judge, Robert Callahan, shut it down immediately. The judge said, "The court deals in reality. We deal in science. We deal in evidence that can be seen and touched. We cannot subpoena the devil. We cannot cross-examine a spirit. Therefore, any evidence regarding demons is inadmissible. The defense was crippled. They couldn't, and apples, tea, talk about the exorcism. They couldn't, and apples, tea, talk about the Warrens. The jury was left with a simple set of facts. Arne Johnson had a knife. Arne Johnson stabbed Alan Bono. Alan Bono is dead. It took the jury 15 hours to deliberate. They found Arne Johnson guilty of first-degree manslaughter. He was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison. But the story doesn't and apples, tea, end there. Because what happened in prison is perhaps the most interesting part of this entire mystery. Usually, when a killer goes to prison, they get violent. They get worse. But Arne Johnson was a model prisoner. He was perfect. He never got into a fight. He finished his high school education. He started teaching other inmates. It was as if the demon had left him the moment the murder was committed. He served only 5 years of his sentence. He was released early for good behavior. And waiting for him at the prison gates was David Glatzel. Despite the murder, despite the craziness, Debbie waited for him. They got married while he was still an inmate. They stayed married for the rest of their lives. They had 2 children. Arne Johnson lived the rest of his life quietly. He never heard another fly. He maintained his innocence until the very end. He always said, "I did not kill that man. The beast did." Now, we have to look at the other side. The skeptics. Not everyone believes the Warrens. Not everyone believes Arne. In 2007, David Glatzel, the little boy who started it all, grew up. And he sued Ed and Lorraine Warren. David and his brother Carl claimed that the whole thing was a hoax. They claimed that the Warrens manipulated their family to get famous. They claimed that David wasn't an apples, tea, possessed. He was just a kid suffering from mental illness. Carl Glatzel said, "The Warrens told us that we would be millionaires. They told us we would get book deals and movie deals. They used my brother." He claimed that Arne Johnson was just a jealous boyfriend. He claimed that Arne hated the landlord, Alan Bono, because Alan was paying too much attention to Debbie. He said the murder was a crime of passion, fueled by alcohol, and the demon story was just a clever way to try and avoid jail. So, who do you believe? Do you believe the sister, Debbie, who stood by her husband for 40 years, swearing that she saw the red eyes of the beast? Do you believe the priests who wrote reports about levitation and speaking in Latin? Or do you believe the brother who says it was all a scam for money and fame? The case of Arne Johnson forces us to ask a terrifying question. If demons are real, and if they can take control of our bodies, how can we ever be responsible for our actions? If the devil can make you do it, is anyone truly guilty? Or is the devil just the most convenient excuse in history for the darkness that lives inside the human heart. Arne Johnson is an old man now. The Warrens have passed away. The house in Brookfield has new owners, but the records remain. The court transcripts remain. And the grave of Alan Bono remains. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, one thing is undeniably true. On February 16th, 1981, something evil walked into that kennel. Whether that evil came from hell or whether it came from the human mind, the result was the same: death. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the real story behind The Conjuring 3. I want to know your verdict. If you were on that jury, would you have believed Arne? Would you have let him go? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, be careful what you invite into your life. Be careful what you challenge in the dark, because sometimes something might just answer you. Stay safe. I will see you in the next mystery.